Now then, here's a little interesting project. If you remember a couple of videos ago, I was playing with that vintage electrical board, the delightful one. Anyway, the comments that I got from that have inspired me to get on with a project that I've been thinking about for more than 5 years. And you know what it's like. It's not a necessary project, but I'd like to do it, and it involves those Bakelite switches. And here I've got my box of miscellaneous Bakelite switches. So let's dig in and have a look and find some inspiration. Right, let's have a look. Now you see, a lot of these switches, they were mounted on this board, right, which was then screwed to the plaster or the brickwork, and that is called a pattress. That's quite definitive, isn't it? But this is full of worm, because a lot of these were made out of beech or something like that. So let's have a look. There's a square pattress. That might be quite interesting. Another round one. You see, this is full of worm. That's a different type with a round pattress, but it's cracked and it's got worm in it. So it seems like we've got, this is similar to the switches on that vintage board, and that is, no, that one's slightly different again. The actual switch itself is a different shape, just slightly. And there's one which is an electrical outlet as well. I don't think you'd get away with that sort of thing anymore. And some more. There is all sorts, and a brass one. But from what I remember, see, there's loads of patresses here. Even that one's got worm in it, and that one. And somebody's put a hook there. And then there's this industrial one. It's quite nice in a cast iron box. And another one. And another brass one. Now then. Okay. These ones, these are a different height. Now that is porcelain there, and this is a Crabtree one. And because it's porcelain, it's very shiny, and I can hardly see the writing on there. Okay, but that's a quick throw switch, and they're used for AC or DC. And then this one, which is a screw top and bottom like that, but these say AC only, because they don't need to be quite so quick throw. So what do you reckon? Should we have that one or that one? One's higher than the other. I imagine quick throw's better than not so quick throw. Okay, so we're going to have to think about, now then, where are we? In the UK you have these steel boxes in the wall. This is a very narrow one. Normally they're somewhat deeper, but those two screws are all in the same place, and a standard light switch goes on the front, is wired up, goes on the front, and 2 screws go through the front. So this just about fits over that. So we really could do with a pattress that's a little bit bigger. Here's a beach one that I've cleaned up, but again, if the plasterwork is a little bit iffy round there, because it's plastered in, screwed to the wall, plastered round, then you want the pattress to cover that joint fairly well. So let's have a look at what size this is. That is 79, which is just it's 3 1/16. So we want to be a little bit bigger than that, and that's about 1/2 inch thick. So maybe I want to make it slightly more robust, but on the back of this switch here, there are the 2 terminal switches, and they're all the same, so it's those 2 holes that we need to use. So we need to position those 2 holes, and also the 2 holes to match up with those mounting screws there, which will be about here at that height. So we need to make up something, a jig that will position all those 4 holes. There you go. So I've just machined this piece of very straight grained sweet chestnut, faced it, edged it and thicknessed it, so it's 86mm wide, and I thought it was probably quite a good idea to do some moulding on the outside before I cut it to thickness, and I'm going to cut it to about 14mm. So let's just I put a ovlo cutter in the router. I've had these routers for 35 years at least, and they're still going strong. Noise alert! So just sand the rough bits off, and then I will cut it to thickness, and then we'll have to very carefully cut them to length and do the moulding on the end grain, which might not be very easy, but that looks all right, nice and sharp. We're experimenting here. So I've put a block there, and that's the right distance, 85mm from the cutting edge, and I've thicknessed this down, or I've dimensioned it to 14mm, so that sits like that. Noise alert! And I've also moulded the end. So we only have to mould one end of this short piece, which may be a bit of a problem. bar. So I'll mould that and then cut another one. So I've just clamped that blank in there like that with a bench hook, and to get that moulding on the end you have to be very careful because the grain's running this way, very careful not to split out there or there. So it's a matter of nibbling a piece with the router. There's just enough room to get the bed on there. So instead of doing one cut all the way through, do a little one and another one and then a final cut. Just so there's not that power up like that. So we'll just sand this up. Luckily it didn't split out there or there. Got a little bit of burn there. I'll have to sand that out. Or I might even wire wheel it out. We shall just see. Oh, that's a bit better. But if we're going to varnish this, it will that will need to disappear. But there you go. Focus. It's got nothing to focus on. There. That will do. And then if we put a there we go. I'll have to make a little jig to drill the holes. That'll take won't take long, but just have to be fairly accurate because it's got to line up with the steel box in the wall. So two of the mounting screws must be pretty accurate. So I've just made this, and we want to make sure that the grain of the block runs sideways. So we put that underneath and it goes against those two stops. So then I could really do with an extra bit of, yeah, that'll do. And then we can just put that like that and drill. Just mark the holes. There we go. And we need to drill from this side so we don't get any breakout on the front. If I was doing loads of these, I'd work out a way of not having to change the drill bits all the time. But there we go. That looks about right. and then that will go on there, and that's 60mm apart. Yep, and then the switch, once it's cleaned up with the 2 holes at the top, goes there. Perfect. So let's put a couple of screws through the back there, and those are the holes for the cables, and then line that lot up, and then drill a couple of pilot holes. There we go. And then we just want some, I don't know, ¾ what do you think? That'll do about right, won't it? The screw sticks out far enough. So we might even need 6s really, but I think 8s will do fine, and that pilot hole was just perfect. There we go. So we'll take the original switch off, poke the wires through there, tighten them up, screw this in place, and then screw the top on. I've got to wash the top and I've got to varnish this, but I'm quite pleased with that. I wonder what 6s would look like. They go down in the holes a bit more, but I don't suppose that matters, because the live is the AC is up here, so it's a fair distance away, and this is into wood anyway. So I've actually changed those for 6s, and as you can see, the screw heads go down in those recesses now. So that's better. That'll do. So there you go, that's it in place. The pattress was between 85 and 86mm across, which is sort of fine. I've noticed on another light switch that I had to counterbore where the fixing screws were, and if you were going to do a lot of those, you'd want to make this slightly bigger or make the moulding slightly smaller. The only other interesting thing of note was, and here we are, let's just come forward, the fixing screws, or should we say the connection screws on this, should be at the bottom. And whenever I was showing it in the construction of the pattress, I was showing them on the top like that, but actually they're at the bottom. So I sprayed this off with some switch cleaner just to make it run smoothly. Probably hasn't been lubricated and everything for the last 50 years. And one last tip is to, although to define or put some pilot holes for fixing this switch to the pattress, fit the pattress to the wall first with the wires sticking out. It's a lot easier to get the wires into those connectors then. There's less fussing about. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this. A bit different, and I will catch up with you soon.